The result shocked the police.
It was a blow to us.
They basically didn't believe a word that we were saying, and that was quite right. Healthy skepticism of an entirely new technology. And indeed, I didn't believe the results myself, so we did retesting. The testing was done, again, independently by Home Office forensic scientists, all pointing to the same conclusion, namely that Buckland was not the guilty party in this case.
After 4 months in custody, Richard Buckland was released and became the first person in the world to be exonerated of murder through the use of DNA profiling.
I have no doubt whatsoever that he would have been found guilty had it not been for the DNA evidence. He would have been jailed for life. I mean, that was a remarkable occurrence.
But why did Richard Buckland confess to a crime he didn't commit?
Then the pressure started getting really hard. We just didn't have a chance.
He had to have discovered the body himself, because in the terms of his confession, he was able to give a very detailed description of her clothing, where the body was, in what position it lay, the ligature and so on, details that nobody could possibly know unless they'd actually seen the body.
With Buckland now out of the picture, a double murderer was still loose.
And of course, the next stage was for David Baker then to make what I think was an incredibly courageous decision.
A DNA manhunt. Police sent letters to all men between the ages of 13 and 33 living in the villages of Narborough and Enderby. The letter asked each man to volunteer for a blood and saliva test.
I'm sure they expected that the real killer, if he was indeed a resident of the villages, would probably try to escape responsibility of giving a blood sample.
DNA testing would only be performed on those who had the same blood type as the killer, which was about 10%.
And it was really an attempt to try and flush out the guilty party.
Which is what it did.
But not the way police had hoped.
The universe has a sense of humor, especially when it comes to cars. As soon as a warranty expires, things start to break and those repairs are no longer covered. CarShield picks up where your warranty leaves off, with service plans that cover expensive repairs. Coverage that could save you thousands of dollars. They pay your favorite mechanic or dealership directly, making the entire process fast and easy. Get a free quote by calling 800-416-6522 or visit carshield.com.
The trap was now set. A DNA manhunt to flush out the killer of Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth. It was a bold plan. More than 5,000 men voluntarily gave blood and saliva samples. But one worker at this local bakery didn't. His name was Colin Pitchfork and was already known to police for earlier convictions for indecent exposure. He didn't want any further involvement with the police, so he persuaded co-worker Ian Kelly to take the blood test for him. Kelly lived outside the area and wasn't asked to take the test himself. Kelly was the perfect foil.
Pitchfork spun him a yarn that he'd already given blood on behalf of somebody else who couldn't go because he was wanted by the police, etc., etc. And Kelly ostensibly swallowed that hook, line and sinker.
Since police required identification before taking a blood sample, Kelly needed some photographic proof he was Colin Pitchfork. They both went down to a photo booth and took a passport-sized photo of Ian Kelly. Pitchfork took his own passport, slit the plastic casing with a razor blade, and neatly inserted Kelly's photo in its place. Ian Kelly then took the blood test for Colin Pitchfork. Of the more than 5,000 men who voluntarily gave blood and saliva samples, none matched the profile of the murderer. But no one could anticipate what would happen next. On a summer's evening, 1 year after Dawn Ashworth was found brutally raped and murdered, Ian Kelly joined fellow bakery workers at this local pub, and the conversation turned to the DNA manhunt. A young woman in the group overheard Kelly bragging that he had taken the blood test for Colin Pitchfork.
She thought to herself, there's something not right about this. This isn't something that someone normally does, no matter how afraid he is of the police. And so she put in a call to the Leicestershire Murder Inquiry Team, and that's what made them focus on Colin Pitchfork.
Police quickly located Pitchfork to question him about the blood test and what he might know about the two murders. Within a very short time, he confessed to killing both Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth.
Pitchfork believed in DNA fingerprinting right away, and he knew that it was as good as an inked fingerprint, and he knew he was finished when they arrested him, so he confessed quite readily.
Without this breakthrough, the chances are the police would have never caught Pitchfork, and I think it's fairly clear that had he not been caught, then he would have killed and killed and killed again.
Colin Pitchfork was 27 years old, married with 2 children. His wife had no idea she was married to a serial killer.
I think he was able to deceive her perfectly well, so that nobody in the whole world knew that he was the guilty person.
It's the same story. The wife, the brother, the mother, the friends of serial killers never suspect that they could be serial killers.
On January 22nd, 1988, Colin Pitchfork became the first person ever to be convicted in a murder case solved by DNA profiling, and was sentenced to life in prison. For his part in the deception, Ian Kelly was convicted of conspiracy to pervert justice and sentenced to an 18-month prison sentence, which was suspended. He served no time for his crime.
I think we've learnt a lot from the deaths of both of these 2 girls. Certainly the scientific advances that have been made with DNA has spread itself now throughout the world.
It was this case of all cases on which DNA really cut its teeth in a forensic sense.
The door has been opened to a whole new aspect of medical investigation.
People will be talking about this case 100 years from now, not because of my book, but because of Alec Jeffrey's discovery.
The new CNN original series Diana introduces viewers to the person behind the princess and reveals a life more complicated and fascinating than the world knew. Diana, Sundays at 9 on CNN.